Marriage, a show where we examine modern marriage from every angle, including our own relationship. I'm Allison Raskin, a New York Times bestselling author, relationship coach, and mental health advocate who convinced my husband to do this show with me.
And I'm John Blakesley, a writer, policy researcher, Allison's husband, and I wore long socks today.
How long?
Really long socks. And I have to explain this. Is because there's someone on YouTube who's always commenting on whether or not I am wearing socks. They're obsessed with whether or not I'm wearing socks. And the answer is sometimes I am wearing socks, like in obvious situations where I'm wearing sneakers. Other times when I'm wearing loafers, I'm not wearing socks because you don't have to wear socks with loafers. And so it varies. And they also seem convinced that this is our actual living room that we're in. So they'll be like, why is John's putting his shoes on the coffee table, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I know you're not supposed to listen to these people, but I couldn't get it out of my head. And so I specifically ordered long socks in part so that on the show you could see that I'm wearing long socks.
I thought you got those to play tennis in.
I did. Actually, they're specifically designed so that I can play tennis in them. Well, I figured I'll double it. But I was like, I got to wear it on one of the days of the podcast so that, this person isn't in an uproar about my sock situation.
The amount of times you've shouted at me, you don't wear socks with loafers.
Yeah. Well, okay. What? I have the driving loafers, you know what I mean? Like with the bumps on the bottom. What psycho wears socks with those?
You could do a no-show.
You could do a no-show, but I'm just saying, like, they're traditionally shoes you don't wear socks with.
It's been a fascinating journey to see you getting used to having online comments.
I know.
Because I've been in this game since 2014.
Yeah, you're an old timer.
I know what it's like for people to have opinion about every single thing you do, to pick at you, to applaud you, to like all the highs and the lows. And I feel like you didn't understand this part of my life or get why sometimes it would rattle me. And now you're a wreck.
Right, yes. Well, you would say these things, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's stupid. Like, this is just stupid troll. Like, why are you upset about some stupid troll?" And then when it happens to me, I'm like, "Oh, I cannot believe." So I'm actually just trying to like not read them in general because.
But you are.
I can't help myself, but I'm trying to,
It's a work in progress.
I'm a work in progress.
Oh, we have an arranged episode for you today.
Ooh.
We're going to be talking to Matchmaker Maria all about matchmaking and the biggest mistakes people make when looking for a spouse. But before we dive into all of that, it's time for everyone's favorite segment of the show, Marriage Moment TM. Hooga.
What? Hawooga?
Yeah. More like a sound effect than a theme song.
Right.
So should I take it again?
No, this is it.
I blew it.
You blew it. You just did a weird awooga, which is like how when cartoon men see cartoon sexy ladies, that's what they go awooga, and their tongue rolls out.
People love that. It invokes a feeling.
Casual misogyny.
Okay. So this is the part of the show where we share a fun and illuminating story, or dare I say moment, about our marriage that's stuck with us for whatever reason.
All right.
And my moment is from the very, very beginning of our marriage.
Oh.
Our wedding night.
Oh.
Well, actually, I share this because perhaps unlike other couples, we went to bed at different times.
Yeah.
We had our wonderful wedding, then we had this after party, and then I wanted to go to sleep.
Right. And classic Allison.
And something I love about us and about you is that we don't feel like we have to abide by the rules. That
there are no
if
rules,
we didn't go to bed at the same time on our wedding night, that would like be a harbinger of doom. And so I just left you with your friends because you had a lot of friends from college who'd flown out for it. You're having the time of your life. And then I went home with my friends and I went to sleep.
Right.
And then the next day, you were upset, but you were only upset because you thought that you had talked too much about some sort of political thing at the after party, and you were worried you'd made an ass of yourself.
Yes.
So you weren't upset that we had gone to bed at different times and I'd left early. You were just worried that you had pontificated too much.
Yeah, I thought I got too drunk and I was just like lecturing about something.
What was it?
I don't want to talk about
it. Okay. But I just thought that was so funny that that's like what you were like worried about. Not that like we, had broken all these traditions, but that you had maybe given too long of a speech.
I have this thing where I wake up the next day when I drink too much and I'm really worried about like my behavior the previous night or if I like offended people or like there's a lot of like the morning after anxiety that I got that I hadn't really had for many years because I don't get as drunk as I got that night on our wedding when we were celebrating, and so I was like, oh no, did I make an ass of myself? And then all my friends were like,
no, but it was also just such a, I can't remember what it was, but it was like such a specific John topic that most grooms wouldn't have spent their wedding night kind of focusing on.
Yes.
It's like some historical thing, like just that was very funny to me.
Yeah.
But I was also just glad that like I wasn't pressured to stay out late or that you didn't feel like you had to give up your friends and that we were able to like begin our life of interdependence right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, well, I have a marriage moment TM. That just happened yesterday.
Uh-oh.
So I took a shower.
I was going to do this as my marriage moment for the next episode.
I took a shower.
Damn it.
And yesterday, and I stepped out of the shower and I'm sopping wet. I'm totally soaked. And I realized, there's no towel. Because Allison is the CEO of the towels.
Well, I was washing the towels.
Right.
They were being washed because it was Towel Thursday.
Yeah, it's Towel Thursdays, right. And so I was like, I didn't get myself a towel. But thankfully, there's a linen closet nearby where I can get, but the linen closet is new. It just got installed recently. And so I don't really know where anything is in it. And so I opened the drawer. There's no of the nice towels that we usually use to dry ourselves. And I'm thinking, I'm toast. There's nothing I can do. And so I took a used hand towel. It was my hand towel. I was the only one who used it.
I used it.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. and I dried myself with this little hand towel. And then you came in. And so I was embarrassed about that for sure. But I wasn't going to tell anyone. Certainly not you. Certainly not the public. And then you come in afterwards and you said, how did you get dry?
Immediately.
It's fucking Sherlock Holmes. Like, why is that? How did you get dry?
Well, because I was working. I think I had a client or something, or I was like finishing up some work, and I heard you were taking a shower, and I thought to myself, how is he going to find a towel? Like, I sort of knew.
Wow, you were already knowing what was going on.
I knew your limited capabilities, and I knew that the towels were in the dryer.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder what he's going to do.
Now, little did I know that if I had just checked the next drawer.
Full of towels. So many towels that's almost why we had the linen closet installed. Right. Because I have so many towels.
Right. They weren't the fancy towels. They're the backup towels.
Sure.
But it would have been better than
a used
what
hand
I did.
Towel. Right.
And so this is my marriage moment because this is how it works in our house regarding the towels. And this is my story about the towels. And thank you for listening to it.
Well, you could have extrapolated more of that. Like, I'm sort of that you can't really, that I'm like so observant and.
Well, I think it's mostly that I don't really know how certain things in the home work.
Right.
I don't know how it works. And so.
But there are like 4 drawers. And so you just open one of the drawers?
I opened the first drawer and then I panicked. And then what also happened was that the guy who was bringing our food, the delivery guy, he rang the doorbell. And for whatever reason, it didn't occur to me he was just ringing the doorbell and dropping it off like every other guy does, that I somehow had to go out there. And now I'm sopping wet. I'm completely naked. I don't have a towel. I look for my robe. I'm like, maybe I'll grab my robe. That's kind of like a towel.
Washed.
That was also being washed.
That's part of Towel Thursdays.
So now I'm totally freaking out. And so then I'm looking around. I look in the drawer. There's nothing in the drawer. I'm in a state of panic. My amygdala is on fire right now, okay? And so I say, what do? I just grab the nearest hand towel And then I put on a quick clothes. I race out there. The delivery man is long gone. Our food is there. And then you come in and I'm like, play it cool. Play it cool, John. But then you immediately called me out.
What's so funny is I'm sure like there are like all these people that would be like, oh no, I'm worried what my adult capable partner will do because the towels are in the dryer and like how will they possibly figure out as an adult human how to dry themselves? And then you think, stop infantilizing your partner. Right? Like they'll figure it out. There's so many towels. It's right there. Don't worry about this. Take this off of your brain, Allison, because you don't need to worry about that. He'll be okay.
I was not okay.
Not okay.
I was not okay. I mean, it was just a confluence of events, and I panicked. And hey, it was okay in the end.
Yeah.
I got dry. I got the food. I didn't answer the door naked. I didn't start screaming. You know, if I had started screaming at the top of my lungs, that would have been bad.
Yeah.
So it worked out. So you know what? All is well that ends well.
Oh, boy. Welcome back to Starter Marriage. It's time to pop the question. This is the part of the show where we dive deep into the main topic of the episode with an incredible guest. This week, we are joined by Matchmaker Maria, a fourth-generation matchmaker who is the CEO of Agape Match, an award-winning matchmaking service based out of New York City, and the host of the dating and relationship podcast, Ask a Matchmaker, which we have appeared on.
We have appeared on it.
She is also the author of a best-selling book by the same name. Thank you so much for joining us, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
Now the tables have flipped. Now we're interviewing you.
Yeah, I'm really excited actually. Because I love the concept of starter marriage. I feel like I'm always telling people that come to my office who are like, oh, I had an engagement and it broke off, or I was married before and it broke off. And I feel like I have this stigma, like this scarlet letter, and no one will ever want me. And I'm like, oh, you just got your starter marriage out of the way. Like, it's fine. You're okay. Like, if you approach it this way and have a sense of humor about how life can happen, everyone will do what you just did, which is laugh. People just want to have a fun time on dates.
And like the reality is whether or not you've been married, people have baggage. Right. I think like there's this idea that like, oh, if you're divorced, then you carry like so much more weight than someone who was just like went in a 10-year relationship.
Yeah.
But often the impact and the amount of time spent and the life change is very similar.
The only difference, if I may say, between those two types of relationships is that one of those couples has a USB stick of 10 gigabytes of photos that they'll never open again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There is like this, like we made this public and commitment.
Right.
And then I think there can be like some like regret around
I think there can be even a stigma the other way though, where it's like, how come he's never been married before? Like once you start to get a certain age, it's like, what's wrong with him or her if they've never been married? And so I could see it going both ways.
Right.
Whereas if they were married and they got out of a bad situation, but they were married young, they were married. But,
someone has vouched for this person in some way.
There's like some social proof there.
Right.
But they're both silly stigmas and really should not exist.
And so I'm so curious to talk to you as a matchmaker because you see the ups and downs of the dating process, and something we kind of wanted to, explore is how people go about this wrong, right? Like I think right before we started the show, we were talking to our producer, Travis, about it, and he was like, yeah, like until I met my wife, I was just looking for someone like hot who I had chemistry with. And while that's good, but like there's so much more to like think about when picking a spouse, when picking a life partner. And so what do you think like people are looking for that like might not actually align with what they actually need or want?
I don't think people think in future as much as possible. And as a result, they sometimes are looking in the wrong pool for the kind of people that they should want to share their life with. So what I mean by that is, and what I'm about to say, I think people tend to think, oh, that's what makes people picky. But in reality, it's understanding where your opportunities lay. especially men, because you just mentioned Travis is saying like they got to be hot and we have to have chemistry.
Yeah,
And I
Travis was
think
a
a lot
total
of
pig.
men do think that way. And a lot of women are a little bit more like, well, no, how will this work out if it works out? Like I think women just look at first dates from a much more future perspective, and as they should. But what I mean by this is that should it work out with who you're dating, because I'm a matchmaker and I'm only interacting with people who date to get married, and because a lot of that population dates to get married to have kids, if that is your end goal, you have to think of who am I going to live my life with that I can co-parent with?
Right.
Even if it doesn't work out with that person and we have children, we still have to get along because we have new human beings on the planet. And so when you start to look at what the consequences of this marriage could turn into in the best way possible, which is kids, then your top 10 lists, if you're making lists of what you should be looking for in a partner, has to fundamentally change. Right? If I ask anyone, how do you describe a good father for your kids or a good mother for your kids? It's not going to be 6'5", blue eyes, finance. Those are not going to show up. That's not what a present parent, an attentive parent, an attentive partner is going to be. So I think sometimes we misalign how we should be looking at the big picture of why you're even dating.
So how do you balance that though with like, how do you figure out that on a first date, or if someone doesn't have a matchmaker, but they're just like scrolling through Hinge, like make the decision for years into the future, try like what is the like indicators that maybe this person might be a good person for myself in the future, if not right now?
I got you. I do this all the time. I help people figure this out with the matrix, but I have this thing called the 5 pillars of compatibility. And you're not meant to discover all the things you need in a partner on your first date. It will take a few weeks and a few months, but there are a few things that you can figure out quite quickly. And that's usually within the first and second date. But those 5 pillars of compatibility, which parentheses, I talk extensively in my book, Ask a Matchmaker. You could find it anywhere you want. End parenthesis. Those pillars are starting off with how you meet them, physical compatibility. No one's ever gone to the open bar of a friend's wedding and thought, you see that guy over there who's friends with the bride? He's got a great personality. Yeah. No, you think that guy looks cute. Let me go talk to him. So physical compatibility is obviously a thing. I think it's a little bit more sensitive depending on the gender of how we judge people, but it's quite expansive at the same time. So physical compatibility goes first. And it's also not just about like, do you find them cute? It's also, are they respectful of your physical space? And are you able to communicate with how you want to be physically acknowledged? So that's physical. That's usually on a first date or with first meeting that you can understand, certain elements of it. The second in that compatibility matrix is spiritual compatibility. And I think some people hear religion, but it's actually a little bit more than that. My company is called Agape Match, and I named it after the Greek word for love. And I know that Catholics and evangelical Christians in the United States have co-opted the word agape to mean God's love or unconditional love. But as a Greek person, when I use the word agape, the definition for me is Aristotle's definition, which is the soul's recognition of another soul. So to me, spiritual compatibility, which is something you should discover between your first and second date, is, did you vibe? Are you supposed to meet in this lifetime? And just because you are supposed to meet in this lifetime, maybe it's for that date, maybe it's for, forever, maybe it's for only 3 weeks, but were you supposed to meet? There have been many times where people see someone perfect on paper and then they meet and then they try to force it to work, even though they're not vibing. But even if religion is important to you or your faith is important to you, you have to communicate why that's important to you. Telling me you like to do Shabbat dinner. Okay, everyone likes dinner. That's not something you can necessarily exclude people from. But if you're telling me, like, for instance, for me, I'm Greek Orthodox Christian, that's important for my children to be raised in that community. You share that, like, to see, is there some sort of spiritual connection as it pertains to the way I orient my family or, how I nurture my community. So these are conversations that you would have on a first or second date. And then the rest, which is intellectual compatibility, financial compatibility, and emotional compatibility, in that order, you would discover throughout the rest, like throughout the next 6 weeks as you're dating. And you have to once you understand this sort of matrix, it does make it a lot easier to say no to certain people and also swipe on people or talk to people that you otherwise maybe would have not talked to.
I'm struggling or bumping up against a bit of like, was I meant to meet this person in this lifetime? Because I feel like for, a lot of people that I work with, anxiety is at play, right? And this idea of like the one, or like, is this meant to be? What is the story? And so sometimes there's this sense that like, I didn't know right away, or I have doubts, and therefore that's not how love should look or feel. And so I'm wondering, like, do you mean more just like I'm enjoying this person's presence? Like I just like that this isn't like such a huge lift for me to have to engage with this person? Because I think for some people that struggle, with the anxiety, relationship, OCD spectrum, the idea of like, were you meant to meet this person can feel can actually like make it like sort of impossible to like be present in the moment and like have a more accurate read of like compatibility.
I think it's exactly, first of all, I think this is a wonderful question that no one's ever asked me. So that is amazing. And thank you for asking it. It is exactly what you're saying. Like, I don't want to cause anyone anxiety. And of course, I'm not a fortune teller, but I do believe that to feel a spiritual connection with someone, and again, I'm not talking about religion, I'm not necessarily talking about faith, is to understand that your spirituality is tied into you being vulnerable with yourself. And the only way you can connect with someone is by feeling comfortable enough to be vulnerable. That's it. Like, connection fully rests on you being vulnerable. So when I think about your spiritual compatibility, it's, can you listen to each other, but can you talk to each other? They're on a first date or on a second date when you're trying to see if you're vibing, not if there's a spark. I don't believe in the spark, but even myself, when I met my husband, I remember thinking, am I attracted to him? Is this going to work? Like, you have of course, the doubt, but the doubt was because I just had the best conversation with someone that I didn't expect to, and we were vibing. I didn't think I would all suddenly kickstart a long distance relationship with someone that I had just met, but that is what happened. And it's okay to have certain doubts in the beginning. You should, especially if you're meeting someone off the internet where you don't have a friend, an accountability partner in the middle, you should be a little suspicious of who they are until you meet their friends and see like, well, how do their friends talk about them?
I've always found that conversation, like if conversation was easy and fun, that was like tended to be like what was an indicator of whether or not the relationship was going to last. But I'm thinking about a friend of mine who she went on a Hinge date with a guy, and she was like, this was like brutal. He was like anxious and like not very like easy to talk to. And then she got home that night, and I guess he had texted her like out again to ask her out again, and she had not really vibed with him at all. And she just said, you know what? I'm just going to give him a second chance.
Yeah.
And she went on a second date, gave him a second chance. They're married. They have a kid, like happily ever after.
This is why I say, my take on second dates has always been, you have to answer yes to two questions. Did you enjoy yourself? Like at the bare minimum, did you enjoy yourself on the date? And are you still curious about them? And if she's having doubts, that means that there is still some curiosity to learn why she has doubts. And it's why, typically I tell people, if you're on the fence, give it 3 dates.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have, you still have to clear that hurdle. People first dates are nerve wracking,
right.
Especially if you're, you just said Hinge. Like I've set up over, 7,000 first dates.
Wow.
I have 3 platinum open table accounts. And it's just interesting to see, like, I collect date feedback from both parties every day, right? That's, if the man went on a date or the woman I'm getting feedback from both people that I set up the date. And, people are always anxious, and I always try to give certain icebreakers. I feel like the best icebreaker you give someone on a date is to let them talk about their friends. So my favorite dating tip to tell people is, when you're on a date, especially first date, ask them, like, tell me more about your friends. How often do you see them? What are they like? and just let that person shine. Because whenever you talk about your friends, you're going to smile and you're going to talk passionately and you get to uncover a lot of things. But it also, that's what's vulnerable. That's building on vulnerability.
That's great, because it's not just like, hey, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets and trauma on the earliest dates. And even like family can be like a little thorny or even boring at times. Whereas if it's like, tell me about like who your best friends are, you probably have like interesting stories from recently that you did with your best friends, or who they are and why they're interesting and great. And so it's like vulnerability, but it's not like so dramatic. It's like, It's like, I'm letting you into my life.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's so tricky too, is like that people can be really nervous. And so you're not really meeting them the same way that you would meet them if you'd known them for a month. And so I think that's why like having some ideas of like, what are you looking for, right? Like, oh, this person's career is really interesting. They do have these good friends. Like they, we have similar interests. Maybe I wait this out a little bit to see if they get more comfortable just like being around me. Whereas I think that, again, getting back to like, what do people think about, like look for that's like a mistake. It's like, oh, well, I didn't have the time of my life on that date.
Right.
And therefore, even though we're compatible in like every major way, I'm never going to see them again.
I mean, the worst daters I've ever met, and luckily I have never set them up, but I've met them through the opportunities that have been granted in media and stuff. I once spoke to a gentleman he was actually on my podcast, and he said that, he strives to be the best first date that woman has ever been on. And it's like multiple hours long. And I'm like,
wow,
what? Why? Like, all that tells me is that you're kind of a player, because it's not about like, my best first date is actually not with my husband. It's with someone else. Right. But that's because I didn't know I was on a first date when I met my husband, because I met him through friends. I do count whenever you meet that person the first time, that's your first date. That's how I count those
in person.
Things. But in person. But I feel like, just having that mindset of like, it has to be the best or it's not, it's nothing. And it's like, no, like most dates can just be, especially if you're meeting off the internet, your first date should just be a meetup. And I know this is really controversial and it shouldn't be, but you don't know that person. And I think going for a walk and gelato, or going for a walk and hitting up a wine bar, is a perfectly acceptable first date with a complete stranger off the internet where you have no friends in common.
Yeah.
See if you vibe, like see if if your pheromones are in line or whatever. And then you schedule your proper first date for dinner. There's so much that needs to be considered as it pertains to like the environment of how you meet someone to create that momentum for it to turn into a relationship.
It's something I want to get your take on. Is I have a couple of women clients who I think really do think about the future in terms of, like who would be a good father, who would be, a good support system, like who is stable. But then their chemistry or intellectual compatibility is not ideal, right? Like that they feel like they can't have the really deep conversations that they would like to have, that perhaps the person doesn't see them as fully as their friends do. Maybe there's not as much humor in the relationship as they would like. But like from a strategic, who would be a good co-parent angle, this partner meets those marks. And so I wonder, like, how do you decipher like what is more important, and how much of a friend does your partner need to be to you versus just like a good partner?
I mean, if we were just looking for good co-parents, we can all just shack up with our best friend and not have a sexual relationship and do IVF and everyone's great, right? But that's not what dating is, and that's not what romantic relationships are. There has to be attraction. There are plenty of women that I know that have done what you're, where they're just like, okay, well, this will do. And then what ends up happening is that there's cheating. Because they feel attracted to something else outside of their marriage that's pulling them away. And sometimes it can be this intellectual pull. I think understanding what each pillar means in depth is is pretty paramount, because the most important pillars as it pertains to long-term compatibility is financial, which is essentially your lifestyle, how you value your time plus how you value your money. That's your lifestyle. And it has to be compatible with your partners. In the sense that, like, listen, I've met people who make millions of dollars a year. They're cheap. They always drive they always, they'll have an economy car. They will only fly economy. It doesn't matter if they're making 4 million a year. They are very frugal with their money. And then you meet other people that are a little more spendthrift. And I think understanding like how you spend your weekends, how you look at materials that you might possess, like the value of them, these are pretty critical, because marriage is still very much the merging of businesses, right? You have now 2 CFOs, and there is a system there in place of like how you're going to manage your money together in the same household. And to kind of go back, you ask like, what's the biggest mistake? The biggest mistake that I think people make is not asking themselves before they start their dating some pretty important questions that they need to have answers to. Not, oh, I'll figure it out as I go.
Right.
No, you need to know some answers to what your personal values are as it pertains to your lifestyle, your finances. For instance, when your parents get older, who's going to take care of them and how will that get paid for? You should have an answer to that already. If you decide to have children, will you pay for their college education, or is that for them to figure out when they turn 18? You should have an answer to that. I'm not saying this answer is written in stone, but have an idea of like what your personal values are as it pertains to money. Do you intend to buy a home one day? Then emotional resilience, right? So now in the emotional compatibility pillar, do you have a strong support system of friends? And if you don't, what can we do to increase that? Because that's key too, right? Your partner can't be everything. You do need friends. Are you able to course correct when if you can identify triggers, can you build some resilience around those triggers? So having answers to certain key questions about who you are as a dater, it makes dating easier. Because one of the questions that I get the most is, how can I talk about money? How can I talk about the fact that I have this education and they're not educated at all? It's like, well, do you have answers to those questions first? Because then it's almost seamless. If you have answers to your finances, then it's easier to bring those into conversation naturally as you're talking, to provide the knowledge to the person listening, how you view money, how you view time.
Is there a red flag that you see with clients where if they say, and then he said this, and you're like, oh, that's a bad sign? I'd be especially interested if it's like something that they think is good, but I'm open. Like, what are the biggest red flags that you should like be scanning for? And I'll also add, if you have an answer to this, are there any ones that people think are red flags that are not?
A lot of the red flags that someone can show me in initial call, I typically try not to take them as clients, because that's like now a red flag in my life.
Yeah.
And that's, showcasing a little bit of like narcissism, or like there's like certain words or language that someone can use when they're on a first phone call with you. Like if they're defensive for no reason, it's like, why you're calling me, buddy, or not lately, it's been going on for 8 years, but politics is the number one deal breaker since 2016. And it's okay to believe whatever ideology you believe, but the way some people communicate that ideology, it can feel as a person listening, it's like, this feels a little uncomfortable, because, sometimes there's no rationale or reasoning as to why they believe what they might believe. And I'm not saying it's necessarily equal on both sides. I'm just saying that, like, if you are struggling to defend your ideology, that might not be the ideology for you. And that is a problem that we see in dating. Like, I currently have some clients, like I would say 30% of my clients are conservative, and they only want to date conservative women. And that's fine. But I think when they go on dates, they're they're both of them are struggling to find common ground because a conservative woman, a conservative man, are articulating their wants and needs in very different fashions, whereas liberal men and liberal women aren't. I'm not saying that just because someone shares the same political affiliation as you, you're more likely to get married, but it's really important to understand like where your personal values are. Yeah. But I am saying like, it's really important to understand like where your own personal values actually come from. Like, why do you believe that? And if you don't believe that, well, why is this the ideology you've subscribed to? Like, what else is it? And I think that's become like the red flag for us. It's like, I've had people tell me, I don't know if I could say this on this show, but, I've had a client tell me, I vote conservative, but I'm okay with abortion. And I'm like, okay, but on a date, how does that, why would, you just said that to me. How does that work if you met a woman?
Right.
Who's not okay, either she's not okay with abortion or what, well, it doesn't matter now if you're okay, because now it's banned in a lot of countries. Like, it's like, where does that come from? So this is the sort of thing that I kind of struggle with as it pertains to red flags. What was your second question?
My follow-up question was, are there red flags that your clients say, oh, and that was a red flag, and that you're like, actually, it's really not as big a deal as you think it is?
So I have a client who is a social drinker, and, he has told us that he wants to meet someone who's a social drinker, but I don't know if you guys know this, but people have stopped drinking this past 2 years.
Yeah. It's more and more.
And I had a match for him. I thought she was lovely. We sent them to a bar and she got a mocktail. She never told us that she's like, stop drinking. She's like, just wants to only drink like twice a month instead of twice a week. And he's like, that's a red flag. She has to drink. And I'm like, dude, I said this to him. I was like, you are a 47-year-old man. You want to get married and you want to have kids. Wouldn't you rather date someone who's taking this like health initiative so that you can have kids one day? Like, how is this the red flag?
Right.
Like, what if she, like, for instance, I think about my sister who's also a matchmaker. She takes this like migraine medication, which you cannot drink alcohol if you take this medication.
Right.
So could you imagine now her husband who's be like, well, we got to get divorced. You're showing a red flag. You can't drink anymore. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not what compatibility is built on. And I think when that happens in those conversations, for me, someone who's been in this industry for 17 years, I actually get some doubt of like, does this client even want to be in a relationship, or is he just looking for anything for it not to work?
Or are they holding on to something like a memory from a past relationship that they're trying to relive? Like, I know for me, like, I had past relationships where like we were both really into wine, or we both really enjoyed whiskey, and I meet Allison and Allison doesn't drink. And it's suddenly the possibility of recapturing something that you liked about an old relationship is gone. And you think at the start, like, oh, this is going to be annoying or a pain in the ass or a red flag. But then you realize, no, being in a relationship with Allison comes with all different kinds of wonderful things that don't involve alcohol, because really what you're doing is, and actually it's great, you can tell that guy it's really nice to have someone who's your designated driver when you go out at night.
And I'm cheap.
We said that to him. We're like, you're so silly. You have a designated driver and now you're
like go up to Santa Barbara now and Allison's driving around and I'm just like, thanks for driving, honey. Several drinks in, but and so, yeah, like kind of what you're saying about the religion, sometimes like interrogating where these red flags are coming from, or what you're like afraid of that this red flag will mean about your life. Just asking, like, what are you afraid of about that makes it a red flag? Is
it like I'll feel uncomfortable drinking around them? Like I'll feel like I'll have to change my lifestyle. Whereas like with us, like I don't care if John drinks. Like I think probably drinks the same amount that he would drink regardless.
Yeah.
Which is different than if you're then with someone who like negatively views drinking and therefore wants you to change your behavior.
Right. And that's like an interesting question to ask the person. It's like, it's a point of curiosity, which is like what Maria was saying earlier, is like on that second date, okay, go on a second date and be like, are you like ethically or religiously opposed to me drinking, or is it just a lifestyle choice that you are making as another independent person? And then that's an interesting conversation for two people to have. I know because we've had it.
I think yes to all this. And also, I think people are really blind to a really critical red flag that shows up within the first 6 weeks of dating someone. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think a lot of my followers, either through reading my book or listening to my podcast or following me, they kind of see it faster now, where like they're like, oh my God, this happened to me. And that is, it's really important to not only see, how they are like on their good days and bad days. And of course, how to see how they treat you when you're having a bad day. Like, are they being supportive? Are they being attentive?
Mm-hmm.
But it's critical to pay attention to how they treat you when you're having a good day. And I think a lot of women and men, I think that's the red flag that everybody misses. Because ask anyone who's been in one of those red flag relationships, how do they treat you when you're having a good day? Let's say it's Saturday morning, you've planned all week to go to brunch with your mother and your sister, and you're going to have a great time. Did he pick a fight with you that morning so you'd have to text him all day? Did he make you cry on your birthday? When you got that job promotion, you came home, did he say, congrats, let's open up a bottle of bubbly? Or did he say, really? So now you think you're better than me? What? Now you're going to be making more money than me? Now you're going to be spending more hours at work? Like, how someone treats you on a good day, that is the red flag that nobody sees. And I think that is where we have to really, I'm not saying they have to celebrate you when you're having a good day, but if they're making your good day, they're turning into a bad day, that's a red flag.
I also encourage clients to see how people react when they don't get exactly what they want, right? Like if you have to reschedule a date, how does that go? Like, is there anger there? Is there resentment? Like, if they suggest a restaurant, you're like, actually, can we go here instead? Like, can they roll with that? Or is like any deviation from what they want going to cause like friction?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that can, because that's the huge thing that is so tricky, and that I try to remind people all of the time, is it is impossible to get to know someone just by going on dates with them. Right? Like, you cannot fully understand another person just through like long conversations. You need to see, how do they act when they're stressed? How do they interact with their friends and family? How do they deal with when work is overwhelming to them, when things go wrong, when things go well? Like, there's this element that like you have to have a level of like patience, because sometimes those conversations can go so well, but then when you're starting to see how the person's behavior actually is when they're interacting with the world and with life, and it's not really what you would want it to be, you kind of go, oh, let me just ignore that. Like, we have we have so much fun together. They're like so great. Like, but what you have to also pay attention to is like how they actually behave in the world, and not just how they treat you or how dates go. And I think sometimes, because we spend so much time just doing like the dating part up front, that by the time we're internationally traveling with our partner and they're a fucking nightmare to travel with, we can try to like brush that aside when we actually have to be like, no, really, a lifetime with this person is us having to travel, and this will be an issue.
Yes. I mean, the amount of people have told me like, oh, I broke up while I was in Rome with my partner. And I'm like, you didn't see any signs? You guys didn't go to IKEA? Like, you should at least go to IKEA first together.
Yeah. Grocery shopping.
Before you go on a international flight together.
Yeah. Just like real world stuff to see how people behave.
Or Trader Joe's on a Saturday morning.
Right.
Like, put yourself, because it's not just Trader Joe's, it's their parking lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the whole experience of Trader Joe's on a Saturday. Like, go through that together before you book a flight.
Yeah. Like,
you learn
errands.
So much about people.
Mm-hmm.
And like the drudgery of your life, you can learn about people. As opposed to this artifice of a candlelit dinner and the best date that woman has ever been on, where it's all a stage production. Which gets me to, do you ever suggest dates to people that are like not just dinner or not just drinks, or like activity dates, or like how could people date better in choosing how the type of dates that they do you think?
So as I mentioned, 7,000 first dates. For the majority of my clients, I think almost all of them have been at cocktail bars or tapas bars or meze bars, like where there's like appetizers and like, the house drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I instruct my clients that when they go there, they are to sit either perpendicular to each other or next to each other, which is good job. But perpendicular, wow. I feel like is more comfortable when you're meeting someone you don't know. I instruct my clients, you're not allowed to sit across from any date you go on because this isn't a job interview. And I try to pick places where that's not the option. Like, sometimes you go to an eatery, especially in New York, where everything is tight and everyone has to sit across from each other. If it's there, I say to them, you have to go sit at the bar then, where you're sitting next to each other.
And is that to create intimacy?
It is to create intimacy, but it's also to create comfort. And I'll tell you why. It is really uncomfortable sitting across from someone you've just met and not allowing your eyes to naturally move as you're speaking, because you're trying to look at them. When someone's sitting across from you, you're trying to look at them in the eye. Otherwise, it looks like you're rude. But if you were sitting perpendicularly or side by side, then it's natural for you. You're looking around the room as you're speaking, if you're being vulnerable, you tend to like look away a little bit. And so that creates opportunities for you to be vulnerable and intimate. So it's, my first dates tend to go there. My second dates tend to be activity dates. So bowling dates. I've done rock climbing dates. I've done go-kart dating. Like it all depends on the couple. Like we try to be very like, I want to like, oh, what'd you guys talk about on the date? Oh, we talked about pasta lessons at an Italian restaurant. Well, I'm going to set that up for your second date.
Right.
Or maybe they talked about how they both like musicals. I'll be like, well, go get tickets. Let's get an off-Broadway show going on. That's your second date, and or like not even off-Broadway, like off Broadway where it's like really casual and like fun.
Yeah.
That's what, we want because that's the second date is the jump off, right? The first date's you going up the dive board, like the ladder, but it's the second date that really matters in the scheme of things. And really another thing that I do say to my clients to just manage their expectations about dating is that, your first and second date is the opportunity for you to showcase yourself. Here's who I am at this present time. And you can tell me who you are in this present time. It's not to determine how is this going to work. If you get to date 3, 4, and 5, that is where you now can start talking about each other. Like, what is it like to be a couple? What would it be like if we did date each other? Because now you know a little bit about me. And like, that's why not everything can be set in stone. This is why I don't like it when people talk in absolutes. Like, oh my God, I would never move out of Manhattan. Well, hold up. You might.
Yeah.
So, this is the opportunity to do that sort of couples dating, let's call it. You're more of a couple now.
More imaginative conversations, right? Like what would our lives look like if we were actually together?
If this worked out, how does this work?
And I think, that might be another issue that people have when looking for a spouse is this idea of they have to fit within my current life rather than most likely we will both make accommodations. Like that what our life together will look like will be different than if we each remain single.
I always have to remind my clients. I mean, I do this even when they first sign their contract and I say to them, like, when I start setting you up with matches, I'm going to coordinate your dates and they might not be available for like the first 5 days. That doesn't mean they're not into you. That means that they are a single person living a single life with a social calendar, right? If they were in a relationship, you would have been a part of those days. You would have been going to the Whitney Museum for this first Friday event or, out to brunch with the people. Like you're not part of her life yet. So she has a life, and just like you have a life. So single people have their single disposable income and they're doing single people things. And I think, it's what you just said, that you're not supposed to know they're the one on the first date. I remember, like, I like to mention my husband here, like, when I met my husband on my first and second and even third date, I never asked him, how is this going to work? You're in Boston. I'm in New York.
Right.
I'm just trying to get to know him and see if I like him. Okay. Now I do like him. All right. Now we can say, well, let's make this long distance. Like, let's figure this out.
But then how do you balance that with I'm looking for a guy who could be the father of my children?
As a species, we really struggle with understanding the concept of zero, the concept of nothing, the concept of something negative. Our brain understands only absolutes. So for instance, if I told you, do not look at the thing that is green in the room that you are in right now, of course, right now you are looking at something green, right?
Yep.
And so this is why I try to tell people that you need to articulate to yourself, not, oh, I'll know it when I see it, I'll feel it when I see it. You need to articulate to yourself, what does your future look like? Who are you looking for to spend that future with? Because once you've articulated it, it's a lot easier to make that into your dating pool. It might be a smaller dating pool, but at least you can trick your brain into like looking only for that. So that way, when you're dating, you can have fun, and dating is supposed to be fun. I know it sucks for a lot of people, but dating is a privilege. Our grandparents and some of our mothers did not have this privilege of dating.
Yeah.
We get to date. So if we're going to get to date, we get to have fun with dating. If you are not having fun, take a break, figure out how to make it fun, and come back to dating.
Right.
But once we are dating, if we're understanding like what we're looking for and we stay to it, like, okay, this is it. These are my deal breakers. Then it's easier to maintain the line. Right. And I'm not saying that it's like there's the one. Like, I don't necessarily believe in that. I think that you have to eventually meet someone that you're like, yeah, I can. This is it. I'm going to grow old with this person. And to kind of go back about like our negatives, the one thing that I hear the most from women is, and men too, it's like, I don't want to date any more cheaters, or I don't want to date any more unemotionally available people. And I'm always saying you have to stop saying that, because the people who say, I don't want to date any more emotionally unavailable people are the ones who constantly attract emotionally unavailable people. Why? Back to the brain. It's absolute. So instead I say, why don't you just tell me what an emotionally available person does? And they'll list it. They'll say X, Y, and Z. Great. From now on, you're going to say, I'm only going to date X, Y, and Z. And if they don't fit this X, Y, and Z, you don't date them.
Right.
That's great.
Well, this has been so fascinating and I think so helpful for people. We have to end with our final question that we ask everybody, which is, what is one fictional couple that you think should have gotten divorced and why?
Walter White and Skylar White should have gotten divorced.
Whoa.
They lie to each other. They manipulate each other. They manipulate people around them. And their moral corruption at their core, they should not be dating anybody.
Okay, hold on. I gotta follow up though. So in the world of the show, of course, he is becoming a drug kingpin without her knowing. Then she kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, kind of has her own things going on. But what about when they first met? Like, were they always bad for each other? Or do you think they should have gotten divorced when he decided to
I think they were always bad for each other. And the reason why I think that is because Walter White is clearly a brilliant man.
Yeah.
And he could have just spread his wings and been part of Gray Matter or whatever that company was. It's been a long time since I watched that show.
Yeah.
But I just felt like, wow, this man is so brilliant. And you know, what she could have done is like maybe drive up his ambition. And maybe he didn't have that. Maybe he was okay with being a school teacher, but she's also quite ambitious. So I feel like we don't know a lot about them as an early couple, but there was definitely misalignment, or maybe they were fully aligned in their lack of ambition, but it just became misaligned. I think at the end of the day, they're both selfish people and they shouldn't be together.
And they didn't bring out the best of each other, maybe.
Thank you. That's what it is. Yeah. They never brought out the best in each other.
I think I agree with you. I think they were a bad couple. And like, because you can tell he's not happy at the beginning of, if you go back and rewatch the pilot, he's not happy with his life. He views his life as a waste. And I think, I don't totally remember where Skylar is at the beginning of the pilot. I think she's got kind of a small role at the beginning and it becomes bigger later, but I think she might have been happier with someone else too. Certainly
but
someone who lied
less. Look at the opposite, right? Like, I know her sister's, I think, like kleptomaniac or something, but Hank, his brother-in-law, and his sister-in-law, I think they have a great marriage.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's just like such a mirror of like, this is a couple that's not really communicating with each other. They're both morally bankrupt. They're both selfish. They don't bring out the best in each other. And then you have Hank and his wife, and honestly, they admire each other.
Right.
And they talk to each other respectfully and they're playful. And I'm like, who am I supposed to be rooting for here? So I was rooting for the DEA the entire time.
Oh, yeah. Also, like, if I'm remembering correctly, the pilot of Breaking Bad ends with Skylar and Walter having sex in the dark, and she's like, "Walter, is that you?" And it's like, who says that?
Who else would it
clearly
be?
It's him, just because he's got his mojo back now. It's like I understand like what they're doing as a storytelling perspective, but that's a pretty passive aggressive thing to say when you're making love to your husband, I think. Is that even you there? Like, F off. Like,
yeah, it's, I think, I mean, listen, the whole thing about Breaking Bad is that you're rooting for the anti-hero, right?
Yeah.
That's who Walter White is at his core, but, not exactly the best example of relationship dynamics.
All right, I'm with you. You got me. You convinced me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and get your book and listen to your show?
Absolutely. You can find me at matchmakermaria.com, or you can head on over to Instagram and follow me there too.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank
you. Have a good one.
So, did you consider any of those things when dating me?
No. But now I know for my next marriage.
What questions to ask?
What questions to ask, the red flags, what not to say. So now I'm all set for marriage number 2.
Got it.
All right. What about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about all of those things. Yeah. And paying close attention to each one.
Cool that I passed.
Okay, it is time for our final segment of the show. My soon-to-be patented game show, Stay or Leave. This is a game where I present you with something I might do in the future of our marriage, and you decide if I were to do it, would you stay or leave me? Because marriage is a choice, not a trap.
Cool, I'm looking forward to playing the game. And a soon-to-be patented game is very exciting.
Very exciting. I mean, I haven't taken any steps yet, but I have intention.
Right. That's all that counts, right? That'll hold up in court.
We have been happily married for 16 years. When a new technology comes out that will rate a couple's compatibility on a 0 to 100 scale. Experts say that if you score below 75, then you would definitely be happier with someone else. I want us to get the test, and if we are below 75, immediately divorce. You don't understand why we need the test because we are so happy. But I say that I have to know our score for peace of mind, and don't worry, it's probably like a 77. Would you stay or leave?
Wow. That's interesting.
Thank you.
So, it's interesting because... Wait, first of all, you say it's probably like a 77?
I was waiting for you to get offended about that.
Sugar distracted me. She jumped up on me. So you think that we're just happy, but we're just over the threshold? We're like getting a C, basically, and so we pass, but not well?
Well, it's as long as you're over 75, you're in the clear.
And so... You don't really trust your own happiness.
Right.
You kind of are wondering if you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would stay and take the test, because if I leave, then I never know what...
Right.
There's a chance that we're breaking up anyway. Then we're definitely breaking up, right? And my happy marriage is over because you've so irreparably damaged our marriage because of your insistence on the game. But after we get it, maybe I could always still later decide to leave.
Yeah.
If we were an 80 or something.
Yeah, we could be 95 and then you could leave just to really stick it to me.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cruel, but smart.
You respect that, don't you?
I do. It's well played.
Which is why we're 95. But yeah, so that's what I would do. What if I said that I'm leaving? I'm gone. Would you, you would be breaking up the marriage So would you say no? Forget about it. You're.
Well, that to me would be a sign that we must be below 75.
Oh, so it wouldn't torture you that you never knew.
No, I would say, well, anyone that I was more compatible with would have just taken the test, and that's some mental gymnastics people play.
Wow,
every day.
that is amazing that you can do. Yeah, okay, that's cool. That's some.
People can convince themselves of anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, well, we did it. Another wonderful, fast-paced, action-packed episode of Starter Marriage in the Books.
Yes. It was... You were looking at me. Yeah, I agree. It was action-packed. We learned a lot of stuff. It was a good time.
And if you wanted to watch us be so action-packed, you can check out the full video version of this show on youtube.com/justbetweenus.
And please remember to rate, like, and subscribe to us on your various platforms. It really helps the podcast, or even just share it. Send it with a friend.
That would mean the world to us.
Yeah, seriously, it really helps us out.
And if you want to submit your marriage moment, TM, please send an email to startermarriagepodcast@gmail.com. That's startermarriagepodcast@gmail.com.
And make sure to pick up one of Allison's books, I Think Conversations About Modern Marriage, or, of course, Save the Date, both on sale anywhere books are sold.
And check out John's incredible Substack, Wrong Man for the Job.
And Allison's Substack, Emotional Support Lady.
And if you're like, okay, I just only want this podcast from you. Mm-hmm. I don't need all this other content.
Right.
We'll be back next week. And as we say in our home, good night to me, the Alibaba.
Good night to you, the Alibaba.
Thank you.